right, so now that you've seen how we are going to take a local build, as in like a Docker file that we are building on our local system, and put that into our Docker Compose, we're also going to add an image that is already either publicly available or not publicly available. For this example, obviously we'll be using one that's publicly available, adding that to our Docker Compose, spinning it back up, and seeing how it goes. So what I'm going to add here is the Nginx image. So instead of saying, well, I'll just do this. Okay, so you can see how I did that. So for this particular service, this is a service that I'm building locally, Flask App Server. I'm building it. The context is this directory, Flask App, and the Docker file is the Docker file within that directory. Okay, so that is something local that I'm building, like in real time. I'm actively developing it. And then as well, I'm also using this Nginx image right here. I'm specifying this as image Nginx, and I'm going to expose the port 80 on the container, which is the default port for Nginx, is 8081. So let's try that again. Okay, and then you can see it went like that. And you can see it recreated this, recreating and attaching to this service and this other service, Flask App Server and Nginx, which corresponds to the Flask App Server here, the Flask App Server service, and the Nginx service down here. And again, the full name of this thing is the build, like the Docker Compose context, which is generally the base name of our project directory, which in this case is build-flask-app-docker underscore service name. And then you'll also see it has an _1 and then an _1 here. That's because later on we're going to get to the point where we can have multiple instances of our Docker containers up and running. So for now, we just have the one because that's what we're working on. We will work on scaling later, but you can see, that's why there's like _1 and then later on _2, 3, 4, however many you want. So here it is. We have Nginx. It's on port 8081. I didn't get any warnings about how that port is taken this time. Okay, and then we can see we have this welcome to Nginx, and this is coming up directly from our Docker container. And just as a bit of a review, this Nginx container I found just because I already know a bit how to use Nginx. I just Googled Nginx Docker, which is generally the easiest thing to do. And then you can see that it comes up right here. This one is a Docker official image. And then where did I find the GitHub repo? Did I find it here? Okay, here's the GitHub repo. So often if they don't have the Docker file just explicitly listed, like sometimes here there's a little tab that says Docker file, and that's handy to find it. If it's not there, quite often just look for the GitHub repo. You know, here's the GitHub repo. So I'm going to head right on over there, and then right in the GitHub repo, well, I'll just show you this quickly as well. There's often several variants, so there will be like a stable, sometimes there will be a nightly build. This Alpine is like a very slimmed down Linux distribution, so that I think it's pretty much so that you can build small Docker containers. I don't know if it's ever used as like a desktop application or something, but that's pretty neat. And then here we have the Docker file itself. It's just like everything else that we've done before. All the way down here at the bottom, it has this command that we talked about earlier. So command nginx -g, I'm not sure what the -g is for, daemon off. Now this is an important point that we're going to get into later. Your Docker Compose image, it has to have like something continually running. As soon as there's nothing running on it, the sort of parent process, which is Docker Compose, is going to think, oh, okay, this container isn't running anymore. And to be able to use Docker Compose, you have to like make it think that it's always running, always running, always running, and it should always be running. That's kind of the point of having Docker Compose. So if you're developing like just an application that doesn't necessarily always have something running, I'm going to show you a cool trick later on how you can still have it set up with Docker Compose so that you have that nice template instead of having to run Docker build and then Docker run. But just so you know, that's why this is like this. This is why you see Nginx and then daemon off. So this means don't run Nginx as a daemon in the background. Instead, run it in the foreground. Okay, and that's also how we get to like, you know, I can press refresh a couple times here. And then you can see, okay, here it comes up in the log. And this is something I don't think I discussed earlier. So when you run Docker Compose, everything that's written in that image, or, okay, let me rephrase that. So within that image, you have some processes running, right? Every time that process writes to standard output or standard error, that is gonna come up in your Docker Compose log. So you can actually see, and it's quite nice, right? So you see Flask app server, and then here are the logs for this. And then also because there was some output from Nginx, it comes up right here, and it always comes up in real time. So then later on, I'm gonna show you how you can really get into the logging because like it's really, really handy. It's a really valuable tool. It's really nice to use. I use it a lot. But like really how you can get into the logging, how if you run this in the background, so I'm just gonna say this one. You can also run this in the background as Docker Compose up-d, which is, okay, now we're gonna run Docker Compose as a daemon, and even when you do that, you can still get access to the logs. So that's coming up later, but just, you know, just so that you have an idea of what's coming up. But really, you can see here, I mean, this is exactly, just to go back to this, Docker Compose up, this is exactly what we want. The colors changed a little bit, but that's fine. You know, here's the Flask app server. We know that it's up. We know that it started running because here's the command. Here's all the output. We can go again right on over here. We can say status okay. We can go over here to this welcome Nginx. Okay, and then you can see here we go. It comes up right here as Nginx. So you can see all of your containers come up in real time, also with very, very nice logging. So that's it for this lesson. So we've gone over how it is that you add a service to your Compose file just from an image, like publicly or privately, I suppose, available on Docker Hub or Quay or Amazon or wherever, you know, wherever your image is available. Next, we're gonna like really deep dive into the logging because that's a really useful feature. So thanks, and I will see you in the next lesson.